The battlefield was quiet at first, covered with dust and broken stones. Alien banners moved in the dry wind, showing the symbols of conquest. The alien queen stood tall in her shining armor, her helmet carved with silver lines, her spear glowing with energy. Her army stood behind her, waiting and confident. They had seen her win many wars, and they believed today would be no different. Across the field stood a single human. He carried no shining weapon, no energy shield, no strong armor. Only a simple metal staff, worn and plain, something that looked almost useless against her powerful spear. The alien queen looked at him and laughed, the sound echoing across the battlefield. "You bring that toy against me," she shouted, her voice full of pride. Her soldiers laughed with her, shaking the ground with their voices. The human did not laugh. He did not answer. He only held his staff in both hands, his eyes fixed on her. The silence in his face was strange. It made some of the soldiers uneasy. The queen stepped forward, her armor shining like fire under the twin suns. "You humans are weak," she said, walking in circles around him. "You hide behind machines, behind allies, behind false courage. But here you stand with nothing, holding a stick like a child." She laughed again, her voice sharp, cutting through the dry air. The human still did not move. He stood like stone, calm and silent. She raised her spear and pointed it toward him. "One strike will break you. One strike will end your kind's foolish dream of standing against us." The soldiers cheered louder, their voices like thunder. But the human only whispered to himself, words too soft for them to hear. "One strike is all I need." The queen rushed forward, her steps heavy, shaking the ground. Her spear came down with blinding speed, a strike that had broken shields and armor before. But the human moved at the last moment, his body bending like water, his feet silent on the dust. The spear missed, cutting only the air. The alien queen's eyes narrowed, her smile fading just a little. "Lucky move," she said, tightening her grip. The human said nothing. He only moved into a ready stance again. The crowd shouted and laughed, calling him weak, calling him slow. But inside the queen's heart, a small spark of doubt had begun. She had expected fear in his eyes or panic in his steps. But all she saw was calm, cold focus. She swung again, faster this time, the spear glowing brighter. The human leaned aside, letting the weapon pass just an inch from his chest. His staff touched the spear for only a moment, a soft sound of metal against energy. It was not enough to stop it, but enough to guide it away. The alien queen stumbled half a step, surprised. Her soldiers gasped, though they tried to cover it with laughter. She looked at him again, her pride forcing her to smile. "You are quick, human," she said, "but quickness will not save you." Her armor glowed, shifting as hidden systems powered up. Energy lines spread across her plates, making her look like a living flame. The human raised his staff, steady and patient. His eyes studied the patterns of her armor, the movement of her arms, the rhythm of her attacks. He was waiting for something. The queen could not see what. Her pride told her she was in control, but her heart began to feel something colder. Was it respect? Was it fear? She could not name it yet. The two circled each other in silence. The battlefield that had been filled with laughter now grew quieter. The soldiers leaned forward, watching closely. They wanted to see blood. They wanted to see their queen crush the human. But deep inside, they also wanted to see how long he could last. The queen struck again, harder, faster, a storm of spear strikes, each one strong enough to split stone. The human moved with small steps, dodging, bending, letting the attacks pass. His staff touched her weapon again and again, each time with small force, guiding the attacks away. His breathing stayed calm, his eyes sharp. Every move, every dodge, every strike of his staff had purpose. The queen's laughter began to fade, her voice no longer mocking but angry. "You dare mock me with silence?" she shouted. Still the human said nothing. He was waiting, always waiting. The battle was only beginning. The queen believed her armor made her untouchable. Her pride told her no human could harm her. But deep inside the silence of that dusty battlefield, something was about to change. The human's grip tightened on his weapon, his eyes narrowing. The soldiers, the queen, the air itself seemed to pause for a moment. The first true strike had not yet been made. But everyone knew when it came, it would change everything. The alien queen stood firm, her glowing spear humming with deadly energy. Her breaths were heavy, not from exhaustion, but from anger. No one had ever forced her to miss a strike so many times. The soldiers behind her shouted and laughed, but their voices carried a strange edge now. Their laughter sounded nervous, as if they too were waiting for something they could not name. The human said nothing. He stood still, his staff resting lightly in his hands, his eyes never leaving hers. He did not boast, he did not insult, he did not even breathe loudly. It was as if silence itself had chosen him as its warrior. The queen narrowed her eyes, trying to read him, but all she found was a wall of calm that made her uneasy. "You hide behind silence," she shouted, her voice echoing. "Speak, human, cry out, show me your fear." But the man gave no answer. Instead, he shifted his feet slightly, his stance sharp, prepared. The soldiers jeered louder, calling the human a coward, a weakling, a joke. Yet deep inside their voices, there was doubt. Why did this fragile creature not break under the queen's power? Why did he stand with such calm? The queen attacked again, her strikes faster than before. Her spear moved like lightning, cutting through the air. Each blow carried the weight of years of war, the strength of her pride. But the human kept moving, dodging at the last instant. His staff tapped her spear, guiding it away. Not strong enough to break it, not strong enough to stop it, but enough to disrupt its perfect path. The queen's frustration grew with each miss. Her pride burned hotter than the suns above. Still the human said nothing. He only breathed slowly, his eyes sharp. Every time her spear missed, he learned something new. Every time her strike grew wilder, he found another pattern in her movement. The silence was not weakness, it was his weapon, and it was sharper than steel. The queen's laughter returned, but this time it was forced. "You are a shadow," she mocked, running from real power. But her voice cracked slightly, betraying her doubt. The soldiers clapped their weapons against their shields, trying to give her strength. Yet their eyes betrayed unease. They had expected a swift victory, but now they watched a battle of patience. And patience was a weapon no one had thought the human carried. The dust of the battlefield rose around them. Every step, every strike, every dodge created storms of sand. The human's simple staff gleamed in the sunlight for the first time, not because it was polished or powerful, but because it had touched her spear so many times without breaking. It carried his will, his silence, his focus. The queen's armor glowed brighter, channels of energy racing across it like fire. She poured more power into her attacks. But with each strike, she lost more control. Her pride blinded her eyes. Her anger clouded her judgment. The human saw it all. He waited, patient as stone. Every second she lost herself, every strike she wasted, brought him closer to the moment he needed. Still he did not speak. The silence between them was heavier than the clash of their weapons. Even the soldiers began to fall quiet, their laughter fading into whispers, their cheers dying in the dust. The queen felt it too. Her heart beat faster, not with triumph, but with something she had not known in years, doubt. She roared and raised her spear high. "Enough hiding," she cried. "Face the strike that will break your bones." Her spear glowed like a small sun, the ground cracking beneath its power. The soldiers raised their voices again. Their queen was about to end this mockery. But the human silence grew louder than their cries. He stood ready, his staff held firm, his eyes calm. In that moment, silence was heavier than sound. The queen's pride pushed her forward. Her spear came down like fire. The dust exploded, the battlefield shook. But when the light faded, the human still stood. His staff had moved at the last second, guiding her weapon into the ground. The shock wave tore the earth, but he remained untouched. The queen stared in disbelief. Her laughter was gone, her arrogance cracked. For the first time, she realized the truth. This human was not waiting because he was weak. He was waiting because he was hunting, and she was the prey. The soldiers fell silent. The dust hung in the air. The queen gritted her teeth and raised her weapon again. But inside her heart, the first spark of fear began to grow. The silence of the human had broken more than her pride. It had broken the belief that she could never be defeated. And somewhere deep inside, she understood the next strike might not be hers. The alien queen's breathing grew heavier, her chest rising and falling inside the glowing plates of her armor. Her soldiers tried to shout encouragement, but their voices sounded weaker than before. The silence of the human had spread among them like a shadow. It was no longer just his weapon, it was his presence, his calm, his patience. The queen could not understand it, and the more she failed to break him, the more her pride turned into anger. She tightened her grip on her spear, sparks of energy racing across its length. Her eyes burned with fury as she stared at the human. "You think silence will save you?" she said, her voice sharp. "I will crush your body, and your silence will die with you." But her words did not shake him. He only shifted slightly, steadying his staff, his face cold as stone. The queen attacked again, her strikes faster and heavier. Her spear struck the earth, sending shockwaves of energy through the battlefield. Dust rose like fire, stones shattered, cracks spread across the ground. But the human moved through the storm as if it were nothing. Each time her weapon came close, his staff brushed against it. A light touch, a redirection, never enough to stop, but always enough to turn it away. The queen's pride screamed inside her. How could this fragile creature resist her? Every strike she delivered was supposed to end him, but every strike only revealed something worse. Her movements were becoming predictable, her rhythm clearer, her anger heavier. The human saw it all, his eyes catching each flaw, each mistake. He had been waiting, watching, learning, and now he knew where to strike. The queen thrust forward, her spear aimed at his chest. The soldiers gasped as they saw the weapon tear through the air, but this time the human moved faster than before. He spun to the side, his staff striking down with sudden force. The tip of his weapon smashed against her chest plate. A sharp metallic crack echoed across the battlefield. The queen stumbled back, shock in her eyes. Her armor had never broken before, yet a small dent now marked its surface. It was not deep, but it was enough to silence her laughter. The soldiers stood frozen, their eyes wide, their mouths open. The queen had been touched. Her perfect armor was no longer perfect. For them, it was unthinkable. For her, it was unbearable. She looked down at the dent, her pride burning hotter than fire. Her voice shook with rage as she shouted, "This means nothing, human, nothing." But her words sounded less like truth and more like fear. The human did not answer. He simply raised his staff again, steady and calm. His silence told her more than words could. It said the dent was only the beginning. It said the cracks would spread, and her pride would not protect her. The queen rushed forward again, desperate to prove him wrong. Her spear danced like lightning. Her armor glowed brighter. But no matter how much power she used, the dent in her chest plate seemed to grow heavier in her mind. Her strikes lost precision. Her fury blinded her focus. The human countered again. This time his staff struck her side. Another loud crack, another dent. Her body shook from the impact. The queen's breath caught in her throat. Two dents, two weaknesses. The soldiers' silence deepened. Fear spread through their lines. The legend of their queen's unbreakable armor was beginning to fall apart. She screamed in fury, her voice echoing across the dust. "I am your end, human," she shouted. Her spear struck downward with all her strength. The ground split open, dust swallowed the field. But the human moved through it, his figure clear in the chaos. He struck again, his staff colliding with her arm plate. Another crack, another weakness. The queen staggered, her pride shattering piece by piece. She tried to laugh, to mock, but no sound came. Her throat was dry, her confidence gone. She looked into his eyes and saw no weakness. No fear, no doubt, only focus. For the first time, she understood that silence was not emptiness. It was strength, it was patience, it was death waiting for the right moment. Her armor had protected her for years. Her pride had blinded her for longer. But now, with every crack, both were falling apart. The soldiers whispered among themselves. Some stepped back, unsure, afraid. Their queen's legend was breaking before their eyes. The queen felt it too. Every dent in her armor was like a dent in her soul. Every crack was louder than thunder. She had mocked his weapon as weak. But now it was her who trembled. Her laughter was gone, her arrogance fading. Only fear and rage remained. The human raised his staff again, this time not with patience, but with purpose. The next strike would not just dent her armor. It would break it. The queen realized it too late. And for the first time, the mighty warrior felt the weight of silence pressing down on her heart. The battlefield trembled beneath the weight of their clash. Dust hung heavy in the air, curling around broken stones and shattered ground. The alien queen stood with her chest rising and falling, dents carved into her once perfect armor. Her pride burned hotter than her spear. But deep inside, fear had begun to grow like a shadow. The human stood calm, staff in hand, his face carved with silence, his eyes never leaving hers. He looked less like prey and more like the hunter. Every moment that passed, the balance shifted further toward him. The queen roared, forcing her fear back. She lifted her spear high, its energy lighting up the battlefield like a second sun. The soldiers shouted, trying to believe their queen still held power. But their voices sounded empty, carried more by desperation than by faith. The queen lunged forward, her strikes falling like storms. The spear cut through the air, each blow meant to end the fight. The earth cracked beneath her strength, rocks breaking apart. But the human moved like flowing water. He bent, he stepped, he slid between her strikes. Every dodge precise, every movement planned. His staff met her weapon again and again, not with strength but with control. Each touch redirected her power. Each sound of wood against energy told her she was losing ground. The dents in her armor grew louder in her mind. Every strike she missed, every breath she wasted, felt heavier. Her pride told her to laugh, to mock, but no voice came. Her soldiers looked on, their silence heavier than any cheer. For the first time, they saw their queen not as invincible, but as desperate. The human silence screamed louder than their fear. The queen spun, her spear glowing like fire. She aimed for his legs, his chest, his throat. But the human was already moving. He ducked, his staff swept low, striking against her knee plate. A sharp crack echoed, the armor split. The queen stumbled, one leg weaker now. Gasps erupted from her soldiers, disbelief spreading through their ranks. The queen's fury consumed her reason. She unleashed her deadliest strike, a thrust charged with all the energy her armor could give. The spear became a blazing line of fire. The ground burned as it tore forward. The human waited, silent, patient. At the last possible moment, he turned, his staff guiding the spear aside. The weapon struck the earth instead, a shockwave tearing open a crater. But the queen's balance was broken, her body exposed. The human struck, his staff crashing down on her shoulder plate. Another explosion of sound, another crack. The armor split wider, sparks flying from the damaged system. The queen cried out, her first real cry of pain. Her arrogance broke with the same sound as her armor. The soldiers staggered back, their faith breaking. They had never heard their queen scream before. The silence that followed was filled only by the sound of the human's steady breath. He did not boast, he did not smile. He simply stood ready, his staff raised, his eyes sharper than blades. The queen's mind raced. She remembered mocking him, calling his weapon a toy. Now that toy had broken her pride, her armor, her strength. She tried to rise taller, tried to force her body into the posture of a queen. But every dent felt like a chain, pulling her down. Her pride told her she could still win, but her heart whispered a truth she could not silence. If he struck again, she would fall. The human stepped closer, his silence pressing heavier with each footstep. The queen lifted her spear, trembling. Her hands were steady with anger, but her soul was shaking with doubt. The human raised his staff, light catching its simple edge. There was no glow, no power, no fire in it, and yet it felt stronger than her burning spear. The battlefield seemed to pause, the dust hanging frozen in the air. The soldiers did not breathe, the queen did not blink. The human whispered for the first time, "One strike," and in that whisper lay the weight of destiny. The queen lunged forward with the last of her strength. The human moved faster than she had ever seen. His staff cut through the air, meeting her armor with perfect precision. A deafening crack split the silence. Her chest plate shattered, fragments of shining metal scattering across the dust. The queen staggered, her body exposed, her pride in ruins. Her soldiers gasped, some dropping to their knees. The queen's eyes widened in disbelief. For the first time in her life, she had been broken, not by machines, not by an army, but by a single silent human with a simple weapon. The sound of breaking armor still echoed across the battlefield. Shards of the queen's chest plate lay scattered in the dust, glowing faintly with dying energy. Her body trembled, not from weakness alone, but from the crushing weight of humiliation. For years she had stood untouchable, her armor flawless, her pride higher than the stars. And now, before her army, before the twin suns, a single human had torn that legend apart. The soldiers stood frozen, their weapons lowered. They had shouted her name like thunder, believing no one could ever harm her. But silence filled the field now, silence heavier than war drums. Their queen was wounded, her laughter gone, her arrogance stripped away. And the cause was not an alien champion, not a mighty fleet. It was one human with a weapon they had mocked. The queen staggered back, clutching the broken edge of her armor. Her spear trembled in her hands. Her voice cracked as she tried to speak. This means nothing," she forced out, but even she did not believe her own words. Her pride wanted to rise, but her heart knew the truth. Every dent, every crack, every broken piece of her armor was a wound to her soul, and the human had given them all. The man stood still, his staff steady, his eyes fixed on her. He did not smile, he did not mock. His silence was colder than any insult. His calm was sharper than any blade. And in that silence, the queen felt smaller than she ever had. Her soldiers shifted uneasily, whispering among themselves. Their faith was breaking. If their queen could not defeat a human, what did that mean for them? If the strongest among them could be shattered, were they not all weaker than they believed? The weight of doubt spread through their ranks like fire, and that doubt hurt the queen more than the broken armor. Desperation burned in her eyes. She raised her spear once more, her hands shaking but her pride forcing her forward. She roared, trying to cover her fear. "You will not win, human," she cried. But her voice lacked the power it once carried. Her soldiers did not cheer this time. They only watched in silence, their eyes wide, their hearts uncertain. The human moved, slow and steady, each step echoing louder than her roar. The dust swirled around his feet, his shadow stretching long across the broken ground. Every step he took crushed her pride deeper. The queen attacked again, her spear glowing brighter as she forced more energy into it. The light blazed, but her strikes were wild, uncontrolled. The human turned them aside with simple movements, his staff brushing the weapon away again and again. He did not rush, he did not waste strength. Every strike she made only drained her more. Every miss only widened the cracks in her soul. Finally he struck. His staff slammed against her side, shattering another plate of armor. The queen gasped, falling to one knee. Her soldiers cried out in shock, but no one moved to help her. She looked at the human with wide eyes, her breath ragged. Her spear slipped from her hand, the weapon that had been her pride, now falling useless to the dirt. The silence grew unbearable. She wanted to laugh, to mock, to rise again. But the laughter would not come. The pride was gone. Her arrogance had turned to dust. And all that remained was the truth she had denied. The human was stronger, not in armor, not in weapon, but in spirit. And spirit was something her pride had never understood. The human stood over her, his staff raised. He could have struck again. He could have ended her life. But he stopped. He lowered his weapon slowly, his eyes calm but firm. His voice broke the silence for the second time. "Arrogance is your true weakness," he said. The words cut deeper than his staff. They pierced through her pride, through her soul. And in that moment, she knew she had already lost. The soldiers bowed their heads, unable to meet his eyes. Their queen, their legend, their pride of countless battles had been broken. Not killed, not destroyed, but shattered in a way death could never achieve. She knelt in the dust, her armor broken, her pride in ruins. And the human stood tall, silent once more. The battlefield no longer belonged to her. It belonged to him. The queen remained on her knees, the dust of the battlefield clinging to her broken armor. Her spear lay abandoned beside her, its glow fading into nothing. The silence of her army pressed heavy against her. They had once shouted her name with pride. Now they stood with lowered heads, unable to believe what they had seen. Their strongest warrior, their undefeated queen, had been shattered by a human with nothing but a simple weapon. The human stood tall, his staff held lightly in his hands. He did not raise it for victory. He did not cry out in triumph. He only stood in silence, his presence stronger than any roar. The queen lifted her eyes slowly, her breath uneven, her pride already gone. She met his gaze and saw no mockery, no cruelty, no arrogance. Only strength, calm, and an unshakable will. Her voice trembled as she spoke. You could have ended me," she said. The words hurt her more than the cracks in her armor. For the first time in her life, she admitted weakness. But the human did not strike. He lowered his staff, his silence answering her louder than words. The soldiers began to murmur among themselves. They had expected blood, a death to mark the human's victory. But instead, they saw something greater: mercy, discipline, and honor, qualities they respected more than brute strength. Slowly, their fear began to turn into something else: respect. The queen's hands shook as she pressed them into the ground. She forced herself to stand, even with her armor broken, even with her pride crushed. She stood not as a flawless warrior, but as one who had been defeated and changed. Her soldiers watched in silence, waiting to see what she would do. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a slow and heavy motion, she bowed her head to the human. The sound of metal scraping against the ground echoed through the dust as her armor bent low. Gasps spread through her soldiers. Never had they seen their queen bow to anyone. But she did not bow out of fear. She bowed out of respect. Her voice carried across the battlefield, quiet but strong. "You are no longer weak in my eyes, human," she said. "You have shown me a strength I did not understand." The soldiers lowered their weapons. One by one, they bowed their heads too. Their voices, once filled with laughter and arrogance, were silent now. The battlefield that had begun with mockery ended with reverence. The human, once called fragile, once dismissed as prey, now stood as a symbol of unbreakable will. The queen raised her head, her eyes steady though her body ached. "From this day," she said, "I will carry your lesson, and so will my people." Her soldiers nodded, their faith shifting, their hearts opening. They did not see him as an enemy anymore. They saw him as something greater, a warrior who had earned their respect. The human gave no speech, no demand, no claim of victory. He turned his staff downward, planting it gently into the ground. He looked at the queen, and with a single nod, he accepted her words. That simple gesture spoke louder than any speech. It told them all that respect had been given and received. The battlefield felt different now. The dust seemed lighter, the air calmer. The soldiers no longer stood in arrogance. They stood with a strange, new unity, a bond that had been forged not in shared victory, but in shared respect. The queen, once proud and mocking, now looked at the human with new eyes. She had called him weak, but now she knew he was stronger than anyone she had faced. And in that truth, she found something unexpected. Not shame, not anger, but honor. The kind of honor she had forgotten long ago. The human turned and began to walk across the battlefield. His silence followed him, his shadow long beneath the twin suns. The soldiers parted, giving him way, their eyes lowered in acknowledgement. He did not look back, he did not need to. Respect had been earned, and that was enough. The battlefield was quiet now. Where once laughter and arrogance had filled the air, only silence and awe remained. The alien queen stood broken, her armor in ruins, yet her spirit changed. Her soldiers stood still, their weapons lowered, their eyes following the human as he walked through the dust. The man who had entered with nothing but a simple staff now carried more weight than an army. The queen's pride had been shattered, but in its place something stronger had been born. Respect. She looked at her soldiers, then at the human. Her voice carried across the silent field, clear and steady. "Remember this day," she said. "Remember the one who stood alone against us and proved stronger than pride, stronger than steel." The soldiers bowed their heads. They had seen strength in many forms, but never like this. The human had shown them that true power was not in glowing weapons or shining armor. It was in patience, discipline, and an unshakable will. For them, this was no longer just a battle. It was the birth of a new legend. The human stopped at the edge of the battlefield. He turned his head slightly, his eyes meeting the queen's one last time. He said nothing, but his silence was enough. It carried meaning heavier than any speech. It told her that her arrogance was gone, but her honor could still rise again. And in that moment, she felt not defeated, but transformed. The queen dropped to one knee once more, this time not in weakness, but in a vow. "My people will remember you," she said. "We will speak your name not as an enemy, but as a teacher, a warrior who showed us the strength of humanity." Her soldiers echoed her words, their voices no longer mocking. They spoke with reverence, with belief, with respect. The human gave a single nod and turned away, his staff resting on his shoulder, his figure fading into the swirling dust. He walked with the same calm he had carried throughout the fight. No triumph in his step, no boast in his heart, because he did not fight for glory. He fought to prove that silence, patience, and spirit were stronger than arrogance. As he disappeared beyond the horizon, the queen raised her head to the twin suns. Her army stood behind her, their pride humbled, their hearts changed. They would no longer laugh at the humans. They would remember this day as the day their queen's armor was shattered, and along with it, their arrogance. Whispers spread quickly across the galaxy. Stories carried from soldier to soldier, from world to world, of a human who faced an alien queen with nothing but a simple staff, of how he broke her armor, her pride, and her laughter with one precise strike. Some told the tale with fear, some with respect, but all agreed on one truth. Humanity was no longer weak. The queen herself became part of the story, no longer remembered only as the proud ruler with shining armor, but as the queen who bowed to a human and admitted his strength. Her people followed her example, their voices no longer mocking. They carried the lesson with them, that arrogance destroys, but respect builds. And the human, whose name many did not even know, became a symbol, a silent warrior whose story would echo beyond stars. His one strike was remembered not only for breaking armor, but for breaking the chains of arrogance across an entire people. The queen swore that her people would never forget, that they would walk a new path, forged by respect and honor. As the suns sank into the horizon, the battlefield lay silent. Broken armor and shattered stones were all that remained of the fight. But in the silence grew something eternal. A new legacy, born not of destruction, but of respect. And the galaxy itself would never be the same again.